The transition to interpassivity marks a new phase in the relation between people and things, or if you like, in the principles of ecology. We might express this by saying that objects as well become emancipated. They already became part of our lives when we entered into interactive relations with them as an interactive part. But they now take upon themselves something that was previously shared between us as human beings and them as objects. Now, in the interpassive condition, they become active on our behalf, as was already expressed in Waller's and Zizek's early examples of the sitcom, the VCR, and the prayer mill. Less bizarre and more mundane examples from daily life that we all know include the sleeping policeman and the roundabout. The sleeping policeman reminds us of something that we, as emancipated beings, already know and have already interactively subscribed to through legislation, for instance, namely the speed limit. We know it, we agree with it, but we don't act on it. This is where the sleeping policeman comes to our assistance. He is not a tyrant. He merely incites us to act according to a norm that we already agreed with. The same goes for a roundabout, although this particular object harbors a more subtle educational agenda. It forces us to slow down, like the sleeping policeman, but also through the design of its curves, that regulates both vehicle speed and vehicle distance, it incites or invites us to establish eye contact with other drivers that cross our path. Even if only momentarily, such eye contact establishes an understanding concerning the situation, a momentarily shared practice, so to speak, in which we can regain our interactive abilities to act in an emancipated fashion. These are only two examples of a more general principle that obtains in our present condition of interpassivity regarding our relation to objects. As we have outsourced interactive capacities to them, they are now in a way able to act on a par with us human beings, on the same level. The interactive condition already implied a new understanding between human beings and objects. The former is no longer, the human being, is no longer just a contemplator of the latter, the object. The process of human emancipation requires that the human contemplator takes on a more active role vis-à-vis the formation and realization of the work of art. And for the work of art, this also implies a modest kind of emancipation. It can now engage in the process of self-realization of its own, albeit still guided by the human hand. The same human hand that, of course, originally created the object. So that was the interactive condition. The interpassive condition, in turn, implies a further emancipation of the work of art, or more generally, of the object. The objects, or works of art, now require a responsibility of their own vis-à-vis us human beings. It becomes their mission to remind us of our emancipatory capacity to act in accordance with the norms that we ourselves have established and have validated through our interactive democratic discussion and involvement. Where we become tired of our interactively established obligations, objects are widely awake. They are ready and willing to assist us in our emancipatory mission. In most cases, of course, their reminder to us will be physical and passive, their objects. The objects can usually do not much more than literally stand in our way or lie in our way, and thereby correct our behavior, such as sleeping policemen, roundabouts, and for instance revolving doors in fact manage to do. They regulate our behavior by literally standing in our way. Although their reminders and corrections are just quite basic and physical, this is, so to speak, just what the doctor ordered. For what we need is not a discursive reminder of the norm. That's to say, we need not to be told again what the norm is. We know this full well, and even more, we have actually affirmed the norm. Or at least we have had ample occasion to participate and make our views heard, which is the maximum that can be achieved regarding norms regulating behavior in democratically organized communities. What we need is not new views, is not better arguments, and is not fuller understanding. We have all that already, that's why we are emancipated. What we need is physical assistance. We need to be literally pushed, tripped, cajoled, or shoved into action. Or in the modern market-related jargon of governmentality, we need to be nudged. We need that one little push to overcome our interactive mental fatigue and start to act. Thus, from my point of view, our new alliance with things, our new relation with them, is ecological, but not quite horizontal. Although things become actors, this does not quite establish what sociologist Bruno Latour calls a symmetrical anthropology. Objects become important to us not because of their intrinsic value, but because we need them. We need them to assist us in maintaining our emancipatory way of life. In that sense, we treat them as means, not as ends, as philosopher Immanuel Kant used to say. But on the other hand, the interpassive relation that we entertain with them does confer on the objects a certain autonomy, a responsibility to act and intervene on our behalf, in our emancipatory interest. So, to conclude, we just have to let them. We have to accept their help and accept that we need help. Similarly, in the interactive era, we accepted that we needed help with our interactive condition, help that was provided to us by therapists, who are the experts in mending and mediating interactive relations. Now in the interpassive era, therapists can no longer help us, but objects can. This is something new and unprecedented. It's ironic and perhaps even painful for us enlightened human beings that the result of the long and slow process of our emancipation should be that we require assistance from objects in order to retain our emancipatory abilities. But then again, the objects do not become alien masters over us. They are merely our partners in emancipation. They enable us to remain what we have proudly made ourselves into, emancipated beings. Thank you.
Have you thought about, how far have you gotten with thinking about how these ideas of the switch from interactivity to interpassivity correlates to shifts in economic models, like industrialism to information-based economies or service economies?
Yeah, a good question that bothered me for some time. It's not. I mean, in a way it is, but my point is that there are many people like for instance Zizek or even Faller who say that the main thing with interpassivity is that it's a sort of resistance, resistance against capitalism, or perhaps the state, but mainly against capitalism. That may or may not be true, but my point is that even if we had no problems with capitalism or economic development or bankers who cash in on millions while defrauding the rest of us, which is bad, but I mean, even if those things were not happening and we have solved that kind of problems, we would still have the problem of this interpassivity. It's exactly parallel to Marxists arguing that after capitalism there would be no more, let's say, contradiction or tension in social relations, that all social relations would be solved, including gender issues and what have you. So I think, of course, empirically this has to do, in the rise of interpassivity, of course, has to do with many social factors which economic are part of. I mean, I'm not disputing that. In other work I also refer to Richard Sennett's analysis in Corrosion of Character, who tries to give a similar sort of argument about let's say that's comparable to my point, that people reach a certain state that I call interpassivity. He calls it differently, but he explains how this comes about through changes in job structure and economic developments. But I just constrict myself to the point that, okay, even if all those problems are solved, then we are still faced with this emancipation issue. I think that is under-acknowledged.
Can I ask it? But you said your theory was historical, so do you see that? Economics is not the prime motivating cause?
It's not. No, that's why I make this analysis with Marxism. Marxists who of course claim that it is, that economics is the main...
What's propelling this process towards emancipation?
Enlightenment, simply the desire to become autonomous. And of course, economics may frustrate this, or or may be positive or negative. May have a positive or negative effect on that. But that's difficult to say. I mean, the market has, in a way, a positive effect on that, but in a way also a negative effect. So that's up for discussion. But I think that is, to reduce. Let's say, I wouldn't want to reduce all problems that we have, or let's say, issues with emancipation, with becoming autonomous. I wouldn't like to reduce all of them to economic development. So when I say historical, I mean, let's say, the impact that Enlightenment from the late 18th century until now has had on us. And Enlightenment is not the same as economic development. But I mean, the question is that it remains very good. It remains an issue, but it's not decisive.